Right, so as long as we're keeping it 100, everyone, needs to let their emotions out and be honest. I understand that when an emotion comes, it's weird and uncomfortable. But just because you only have yourself to account to doesn't mean that the reality you end up spinning for yourself is the ultimate objective true reality. I'm making visualizations to help explain that there is no one reality, in the sense that there is no multidimensionality. Because these systems are so far apart from one another, it's impossible for something of our scale to travel across that distance and maintain what we are. So, for all intents and purposes, as far as we know, those things are within the black. Just how many civilizations might think the ocean is that infinite black. It's the unknown that you cannot traverse during this time period or during this event powered by life force that you are experiencing. So, this is to say we don't have the same access to truth that we believe we do. Just because we've been able to create a computer doesn't mean that we understand the universe. And I think this type of argument is used a lot to downplay the advancements of society, and then they lead into a socialist argument. My problem with socialism is the same problem with capitalism. There is a duality in humanity, right? If you go to South America, somewhere very devoid from this Eurasia area that I'm genetically familiar with and historically familiar with, even through that great expanse of time and space of a human, their written language, the few bits of symbols that we can decipher, already mention a partition between like conscious and non-conscious, between like soul and spirit and awakened. This is thousands and thousands of kilometers away. And in terms of time, it could be like 10, 12, 20,000 years apart. And yet there's still a emergent result of seeing the self, the human experience, as a half of two parts. So when I draw these conclusions, realize that I'm drawing them literally from a wide sample size. The problem with the present is it's very high paced. And the benefit of that is higher energy within the system means that you can potentially have high productivity. And if you look at the world, you say, okay, well, 80% of human beings are still living what would in the future or even now be deemed shitty life. So the rate of energy within the system needs to be high to have a high level of productivity, to therefore increase the livelihoods and the physical, material well-being of the individuals on the planet. However, there's an indirect system we're using to obtain that goal. We're using market forces mixed with, this is politicized, so forgive me for this one, like hedonistic, like it's not truly hedonistic, but it summarizes it kind of well. Like individualism. You sacrifice in your personal expression and individualism the second you basically open your eyes. Right? The second you're not like truly meditating and being with yourself, you're already making a compromise. You're making a compromise to the information you're letting in, how the connection that makes. Even when you're in a mirror, most of you probably can't be yourself. You will just keep it 100. So if you're in the person of just one more person, you're already not picking your nose as much. You're already not farting as much, maybe. Depends who you are. You're compromising yourself every time you meet with someone. And the more people you meet with, the more compromises need to be made, because the generalizations that you make between yourself and maybe one person next to you don't apply to someone with a different background than you, who basically had different environmental forces applied to them. So I'm just tired of this emotional weakness, honestly. If you call yourself a man, like yeah, I'm a man, but you have hate in your heart and you're not addressing it, you're weak. Is what you are. Is you're weak. And before you start bigging yourself up, I'm a man. How about accept the fact that you're not everything you wanted to become, and then work towards it. Right? It's all very logical. It's like we have to downshift in order to upshift again. But if we're just focused on where the gear is, we're like, well, I can't go to 2 because 2 is less than 1. So you making that baseline assumption, you then make all these complications and these extrapolations on how I can stay in this gear for longer, try and go up a gear. When in the environment, it might just be a red light, bro. So you just take it out of gear. Wait till it's green light. Now, it's obvious that these types of situations will arise in our life, and the best way to get out of them, or ideally to avoid them, is to have multiple perspectives. We're in the information age. People in Africa have smartphones. They need internet. Elon Musk is apparently working on that, so we'll see how that is. If it's trash, I'm going to say it's trash. If it's amazing, I'm going to say it's amazing. Now, once this human right has been achieved, human rights is something that develops over time, so what in the past might have been a human right, access to water, is now very distant to the values that we believe we can create. And part of that belief is what we see around us. Look, I'm on a laptop. Look, I have a cup of tea. I have shelter when it's raining. These things are clearly of value to us, so we need to establish these things. So now you're saying, okay, again, socialism. No, humanity is of 2 halves. You need a capitalistic, tainted, leaning entity system, and you need a socialist leaning system. My problem with capitalism and socialism is, first of all, the half of a coin. Well done, you played yourself. Second of all, they're outdated. Not only in outdated thinking in terms of we can think better now, but the reality that we find ourselves in right now is different. For example, there's actually a relatively straightforward solution to the world's problems. Product capitalism is the most productive system that we know of. Now, China's maybe arguing that, but they've not been doing it for a long time. They're in a kind of a sweet spot in terms of their demographic, where more people are like trying to get into the middle class than actually are in the middle class. So, you just have to keep watching. But for now, as far as we realise, capitalism is the most productive system that we have. Okay, saying that that's denying that systematic virtue or property and recreating other systems to explain why socialism is more productive than capitalism. Again, you're doing you're trying to get into second gear when it's a red light. Just accept reality as it is. But it's hard because, especially when things have been politicized. Now, politicized is just a word game, like a gotcha game. Like, you said that word, but you actually meant that word. Right? It's just the faster we can realize that politics is a game, the faster we can get it more efficient, the faster we can enter tertiary markets into the environment, right? Because football, you can have people who make the studs, you can have people that design footballs, whatever it is. I'm sure grass seed companies, right? All these markets that are then sustained off it. And we can also then get into the mindset of the general masses. Guys, this is just a game, right? It's just a thing that they're doing. It's not the solution to your problem. The solution to your problem is localized. And what are those local problems? What are they always? I don't have a good use of my time. I don't spend my time in ways that are long-term beneficial to me. There isn't enough stability in my environment. There isn't enough excess in my environment. And then maybe there isn't enough education in my environment. Now, the reason I put that last stipulation is because we naturally, as humans, educate our children. We need to get the priorities right, how this thing happened. People who would say I'm a scientist, yeah, trust the scientists, are taking the system made by humans more seriously than like archaeology, where you literally have bones. Whereas with this system, you like, what do you have? Maximum you have. And then growth happens exponentially. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the S curve now. So to look at an exponential increase and apply it linearly, right? So you're saying, well, it went up 12% yesterday, so it's going to go 12% today. That's linear extrapolation. It's bad. It doesn't work. It's not. It doesn't work. Like for some things it works, but nature naturally has these logarithmic limitations to it. And you would expect a universe that is stable enough to host something as complex as our version of life. You would expect there to be tendencies towards stability as opposed to exponentiality. Because then we would need more and more energy to stay alive, for example, or maybe humans would just explode all over the planet. But then you have to realize that exponentiality exists also within different time frames. So if you're an insect and you see something radiate heat quickly, doesn't mean that same perception is aware on my scale. For you, it's constant increase, but for me, it's a blip, a contained environment. So listen, the problem with politics is, first of all, it's a game, and we're not realizing it's a game, because what we're made to believe is like everyone's problems have to be solved with politics. If you don't do politics, then like you're basically dooming yourself and the nation. I mean, come on. There are redundancies in our own bodies for energy supplies, energy deficits. Do we have those redundancies within our society? In some areas we do. Right, in planes, there are like 3-4 levels of layers of redundancy in some areas. Why? Because someone has taken an overall concept, encapsulated it, and iterated it with a free market to increase that competition. Wonderful. Wonderful. But the states of things that are required for a society aren't defined. And that's basically because of the freedoms that we have. So the question really is, like, it's not, even though I don't agree with, the choice basically is Black Mirror, what Black Mirror is suggesting. It's, do we sacrifice our freedom or individualism, or do we like rebel against it and be more, like animals or whatever? Now, again, they're linearly extrapolating with the current silicon technological advancements. They're presuming that will continue to exponentially increase when people can't really stay in this system for long without burning out. Right, as someone who knows about esports, like, even if you really like it, just the way it is so unhuman. Like, your human body isn't that amazing at maintaining that state. So to then linearly extrapolate the further exponential success of silicon and impact into our lives, again, is linear extrapolation. It's just not that useful. And it's difficult, to be honest, because what does honesty really mean? If I now decide to act a certain way for the rest of my life, and I do, at what point was that a reality? Was it the moment I decided? Was it 1 nanoquintillionth of a nanosecond before then? Or after? To make the actual distinction between reality and non-reality I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying it's a very bold statement to make. So when someone says, that's what the scientists say, bro. That's not how it works. First, you have to completely change your mindset from point scoring, where you say a certain word, My issue with Black Lives Matter is the natural thing that you say against it, just like the natural binary. Just like when I stand in the ray of the sun and I create a shadow that is an imprint of me, the natural imprint of Black Lives Matter is all lives matter. That's the way it is. That's the way it will happen, and that's the way it did happen. And now, because of this political point scoring, you're saying every time someone says all lives matter, they're racist. So now you've made a natural imprint for some of your population. You've made that natural response the enemy. Not like wary or these people are likely to disagree, so we should try and see their perspective. None of that. All you're saying is they're all enemy. And when you're enemy, you're trying to fight. And fighting is destructive. Now, again, it's all about honesty. If you're saying like, oh, well, this emotional damage has been done to the, say, black people, but really it's just the working classes, whoever's at the bottom of the human civilization. These people have been victimized, and that emotional damage that's been done upon them shall in some way ricochet around the liquid body and come back to that individual or that society or that civilization. And it might not be now or tomorrow, but it will, and it might not be the same way that you did it to them, but it'll come back to get you. This kind of like social idea of like karma. And you see it in history all the time. Germany will go do France, put massive reparations on them. World War II, they do the exact, World War One, they do the exact same thing back to Germany. Like these forces do act, but it's not as direct as physics. There's a lot more convolution in it. And from that perspective, you could say, well, the rights are inevitable. Sure, the rights are inevitable. When you have people at the bottom getting squashed by the overall mass of the pyramid and not appreciated, underappreciated, those energies are going to ricochet through the system. Do you want a rocket that goes 3, 2, 1 ignition? Alrighty ho, yep, alright, yeah, okay, yeah, right. And does that the whole way? Or do you want it like uneven, jagged, irrational, sensational? Right? Clearly you want the smooth process. And if there's all this chaos and all this damage and this fucking disaster at the bottom, the emotional damage, the emotional chaos, then that's obviously going to ricochet on the pyramid and it's going to help to tear it apart. As it should, some may say. The system isn't stable enough for its ambitions. So they should naturally take the L, take the dub that everyone's still alive and continue. Right? But the pyramid, the structure, realizes, hang on, we are a bit stable though. And then I can either hold on to this bit of stability or I can go into the complete disaster. And even if I'm not warm anymore, like, you know, I'm as cold as the dark universe around me, at least I'm not alone. There'll be these reasons for the structure to try and maintain. So now in society we have a battle between the stability and the disorder, right? The emotional damages that have been done to the hardware, the people of society. Is that so much damage? At what point do you tell someone, okay, your experiments are just too damaging, right? Amazing things have been found, or very useful things have been found out from fucked up German scientists doing fucked up experiments, Russians too, Americans too. And I'm sure, like, if there's definitely some kind of problem we could solve that's very inhumane. So at what point do we say, yeah, but the amount of damage you caused just wasn't worth it? Now, we live in a world out where the ends usually justify the means, and especially in a dishonest society, where you simply don't own up to what you've done. At least in the past, well, you can't even say at least, sometimes in the past, cultures would say the truth, but they would glamorize it. So they wouldn't say, oh, and there was no genocide, which is what happens like these days. In the past they would say, we righteously rid the land of these disgusting whatevers. Our God was pleased at the 50,000 corpses. You'd be like, okay, at least they're owning what they did. So then we can actually see it. Okay, right, that's what happened. Instead of what happens now is, if I do terrible things, but never admit to them, and tell everyone I talk to about good things instead, I can just do what I want. Sure. But is that truly for the interest of the stability? So eventually the stability will realise, hang on, these individuals acting as individuals, which is incentivized by today's society. You can say, oh, well, how is it? Well, is there a direct incentive from modern society? That could be through culture, through what people value, through what's monetarily or financially exchangeable. Is there an incentive or disincentive towards free charity work? I think in some groups, people say, oh, that's really good that you did that. But in other groups, there's like, oh, what, you're like taking money for being a charity, and I would say it's not the most incentivized path, right? But if you just want to get into a big business, work your way up the ladder, and every second along the way live a lavish lifestyle, that's incentivized. You have a bigger economic imprint. Traditionally, culturally, you gain status, and you can display how much you're able to sell and increase your status. And then you could say genetically or in terms of production, the higher status that you gain, the better type of mate you can find for yourself. And even that in itself is toxic. You shouldn't try to find a better type of mate. You should try and find a mate that you are truly harmonious with, right? Whether that's synchronous or asynchronous, it doesn't matter. The idea is to increase resonance of every individual within society so that society as a whole has basically more computing power. It has more emotional power. We don't think of a thing and then we do it. We feel a thing and that pushes us to do it. If you talk to someone about math, about like a certain problem that they like, they're like smiling, they're beaming, they're like having fun. They're, you could say, youthful. Enthusiasm for knowledge or this subject or this hobby is driving them to do things in the real world. So if we can get individuals leveled up, if we can resonate them, if we can fill their electronic shells so they can have those extra capacity, whilst updating the software, the mind frame, the tradition of the individuals and or the masses, then we can impose a new system. Right now what you're saying is, yeah, I know we have a Pentium processor and there's no graphics card in it, and and the screen is like 17 by 14. But I wanna run Crysis. I wanna run Civ 5. I wanna run Arma 3. Right? You can't even be. You're asking for something that doesn't exist, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's what ideals do. But we're not even splitting ideals. We're basically kind of saying, hey, because we're living now and I'm happy now, and that's real, and the ideals I believe with harmonize with my good life now, good life is now, and that is real. And anyone not living up to my standard is now like a bad person or like less virtuous. When the reality is you're only able to care about, oh, should I go into the career of my dreams or like just a mundane job? Even that decision is a hyper luxury, where the alternative really, when you don't have food in your stomach, there was a tiny bit of panic with COVID. Tiny bit, a tiny bit. Right? People think it's crazy because they spend all the time looking at the media. Spend time looking at yourself. Spend time watching something, witnessing something, feeling a thing, and trying to figure out what that is. Because that's how you'll grow your overall human capacity, your emotional bank. And that's what society needs. Society needs people to see something on Instagram or on their friends list that they disagree with, and to have the patience and the understanding that they don't live in the same reality as you. And the only way you're going to get change is the change in the mindset of people. People say change. What does that mean? A new road, a new taxi, a new school? No. Change means that the mindsets of the individual and the cultures have been further aligned to the overall ideals of society based on the ability of the time. What's the goal of society right now? I'll cut to the chase. There isn't one. Oh yeah, be free, pay tax. That's not a goal. A goal is, oh my days, Germans are coming, they want to kill us all. The bloody bastards actually might do it. Let's all actually kill the Germans before they kill us. So that's a twofold. That's emotional, right? It's basically existentialism, right? Can't get much more powerful than that, and that'll come in play in a second. Capitalism uses that because it's a powerful force, not because it's inherently evil. Right? Capitalism uses the incredible potent power of existentialism because it's a powerful force, not because it's essentially evil. Now you could argue something that can't differentiate between good and evil is evil. A sociopath, for example. But is a car evil when it runs over a person? Right? Most people would say no. I would say the vast majority of people would say no. Because you see it as a tool. And society is the same. However, love is also a very powerful force. Right? There are many other powerful forces. There are many beautiful forces that are on the power scale aren't very high, but are still incredible. Right? But capitalism is trying to get maximum productivity. So you're trying to get as much energy into the system. Just as like a pool. Right? If you're thinking, oh, I want to grow bacteria, are you going to make it super dry, super hot, super radioactive? Probably not. Right? You're probably going to make it a bit moist. Pause. Right? You're going to make it nice and warm. You know what I mean? You're going to want to put some nutrients in there, some sugars, whatever. And that's the pool that we need to grow this new society out of. I don't disagree with capitalism because it's bad or good or whatever. It's just old. It's old as hell. Same with language. Language has the beautiful allure of perceiving like you know what we're talking about, but we're actually miles apart. Light years apart. I can read something and say, hey, I saw you last week. Lol. You can take that as he witnessed me and is laughing at my existence. Or you could take it as he saw me and was happy to see me. The difference between like disgust and joy is like the difference between soy sauce and a ripe plantain. Like if you can't tell the difference, I don't think you should be specializing in this area. Right? And we communicate through these forces. Not exclusively. There are many things that have been created just purely off like logic. And they're beautiful and they're very useful. But many things have been created, equally so, that are purely of emotion. And they're also beautiful and they're also very useful. And this disparity simply comes from the fact that we're using basically one-dimensional desert tech that's 2,000 years old. How do I need a new phone every 3 years? How do I have a laser tracking mouse pad with silicon that was mined by probably children in Africa? while simultaneously, that's the issue. Without the actual goals within a society, without saying this is the number one goal, we need to get those lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs sorted from the utility perspective. We need to have a right culture for them to invest in. We need to widen the family system so that it's more stable. Can two people raise a kid well? Yeah, the right person could raise a kid well on their own. I mean, the right kid could raise themselves fine on their own. But we're talking about stability, and when a lot of the productivity system, capitalism, comes in, they say, "Ooh, I could slice a bit off there. I could slice a bit off there." And if you do it right, you just made the thing slimmer. You've made it more aerodynamic. That's wonderful. That's fantastic. That's necessary. But if you apply it in the wrong area, or slice for too long, you're slicing into redundancy. Right? You might send two roots, if you're a tree, off in a kind of the same direction. And you might think, well, that's completely wasteful. You should send it 90 degrees or 180 degrees to maximize your surface area. But what if one of them encounters a problem? What if one of them gets crushed or denied or eaten or exposed to the air? Then at least you have that redundancy. And if you're using capitalism's system of efficiency and apply it to the wrong area, you remove redundancy. And in this COVID crisis, we've realized that we can't even pause. Like, we weren't even saying, hey guys, end everything, end all of society, right? It's like we're in a theatre. Someone's getting stabbed right there. Then the perpetrator leaves, and then a massive brawl starts. All I'm asking, can we stop the film? Can we just stop the film, because clearly there's some mad thing going on here. Let's settle this down, and then we'll assume the film. We'll belay it, right? That's all I'm asking. For society just to pause a sec. We can't. We don't have the ability to. So how advanced are we actually? On the one hand, we're hyper advanced. However, our society isn't the same level of advanced. Now, you could say it's 5,000 years ago. That's not just a bad thing. We have a long tried and tested one-dimensional strand. That's very useful. And we shouldn't always look back and be like, look how terrible these people were, or how outdated these things were. At the same time, we should try and avoid looking at things with too much. For example, the amendments in America, right? The amendments, whatever. Amazing. At the same time, not literally written by, God, was it? So the idea that this should stay the same, it's just too much. It's too much awe, or not enough trust in the authentic ideas of your ancestors. You should want to believe that the ancestors suffered and gave down lessons, so to try and avoid your suffering. So when they say something, instead of adding a political layer and saying, that's +1 or -1, what did he believe in, or what did he, just tallying up the points, Yeah, if you want to play that game, that's fine, but let's not delude ourselves that you care about the actual problem. Just like when someone's watching football, there's no point in being like, you actually don't care about global warming, right? What would people say? Like, what's going on, bro? I'm just trying to enjoy this social event. Like, what are you trying to do? Right? Same way, like, if you like politics, you like point scoring like that, that's great. It's good for your mind, and there are certain uses for it. That's good. But don't act like, oh yeah, I'm a noble person trying to like change the world. Clearly not. Right? Is a footballer trying to change the world, or are they trying to play football? Right? Like, let's just be honest. That's what I'm saying. At least Trump says what's on his mind. Is that honesty? No. Is it closer to honesty than almost any politician almost ever? Possibly. And that's the ridiculous part of it. That's the ridiculous part of it. And a lot of the reasons why they're acting like that is because the society isn't stable enough to pause. If society could actually just pause and everyone was like, oh, there's an outbreak, boys and girls, everyone just chill off, and the robots and the drones will just plow the fields, and we'll just keep on like a low energy state, wait till this blows over, and then we'll go back. We don't have a low energy state. There's no standby, right? We're in one now because we've been forced into one. But it's not like a mode we're in. It's not a setting. It's just the power plant is low, so the lights are flickering. Oh yeah, we've got low setting on our lights because the power plant's almost fucking busted. Right? Think about this. You can put your laptop into sleep, but society has to maintain at like 85% efficiency or capacity, sorry, in order for 20% of the entire world to live kind of okay, but from the future's perspective, still cavemanish. Because how do you look back at a caveman? Instead of looking back and looking at what they were connected to, like the stars, the things that we've been disconnected from due to light pollution, and you look at the things that they struggled with that we don't now, like abundance, like shelter. You just say, oh, look how he has nothing, or how he like stinks, or whatever. You're not looking at we're in the informational age. Like you right now, you're in the informational age. You have a phone, you have a computer, you go to a library, and you can basically know anything. So you need to level up yourself with the information around you. If you don't do that, whose fault is it? You're a low energy atom. But if you address those problems, those insecurities, those black holes within yourself, you just grow and grow. Like the thing that's keeping you small can be the thing that makes you big. There's no preference of happiness or sadness by the universe. It doesn't give a heck. We basically made it up. It's basically a level of abstraction again on top of physical reality. Society could be super happy or super disappointed. 10 people could be happy at the top, or everyone could equally be slightly above neutral. The thing that the universe cares about is the stability of it. And that type of pyramid structure, Illuminati, that type of pyramid structure does provide stability. Right? Diamonds do grow in that formation. They naturally prefer to be in that state because it's the most stable. So clearly the universe agrees that there is stability to that hierarchy, that patriarchy, I get it. That's what the universe cares about. So that's what we need to strive society to be more like. It doesn't care about if there's one person in the head or if we're all in it together. So that's a good thing. That means those weaknesses within yourself can be removed, right? That the energy levels of the individuals that become a society can be increased. And we can try again, or we can try and, right? We could throw the whole thing away. We could just mend certain bits. We could take the best bits and we could take some new bits, and then we could leave some unknown. Right? There's many different solutions to this problem, but people are basically just accepting that it is a problem that can't be answered because they're not living in the here and now. Are we in a very advanced society with very progressive views, or are we not? It's very simple. It's very simple. Is the West as good as it thinks it is, or is it not? Very easy. Very easy. And if the answer is no, what do we need to do to get it to that place? And if the answer is yes, then let's begin right this second. That's it. And it all begins with being honest with yourself. Because if the leader of your nation is honest with themselves, it will only bring more transparency to the overall system. It's like having a business that has a bottleneck. And that bottleneck is, remember that octopus that would grab like different tokens? It'd be that kind of principle, right? It'll be a goat. There'll be like different rocks. Each rock will symbolize a different mood. And when you propose an idea to the goat, and it'll eventually move to some kind of rock, and then based on that mood you will decide like, oh lightning. You'll decide, oh yeah, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. Like, why are we leaving? The more we put our own personal disharmonies into the system, the worse the system goes. Right? We're adding that randomness, that goat, that feeling of like, oh, why do I feel so terrible? Or you're putting that in the way of the greater good. And if you're not addressing your own issues and you're in a position of power, you are jeopardizing the people that you're working for. So you're already a bad person by de facto. Like, not because you have the bad values or because you love pain or anything. You simply happen to be in a position where now morally you're not a positive person for society. So everyone that is in a position of power, whether they want it or they happen to be there, has to prioritize being truthful and honest. That's it. And politics doesn't let you be truthful and honest. So I can't trust a single person that trusts in politics. I'm being serious. I can't trust with the actual future, the real future that we're all a part of, whatever that looks like. I can't trust you with where we're going. Because you're over there thinking that like, oh yeah, like everything's like this, yeah, and then like, yeah, and then people like, yeah, yeah. You're still too scared to like turn around in the street because you think everyone's looking at you. Yeah, I felt that. Everyone's felt that. Was it childish? Yes. And that's the exact problem. A lot of these children are having children and creating children. Instead of truly accepting, oh wow, I'm incomplete. I don't know. I'm lonely. At least then, the environment has a chance at solving your problem. But if you're not even honest with what you want, if you're like, oh, I just want a new this, then if you're lucky enough for the environment to help you out, it'll help you in what you say you want, which is this. But that's not what you wanted. Because that was a short-term thing, or a shallow thing, or a supplementary thing. At least if you're honest about yourself, to yourself, for yourself, I don't need no helper for my boys.